Hi everyone, I'm Maya. I'm a program assistant at Russell Sage.
Hello, everyone. You heard me before speaking, but my name is Deandra Duran. I'm also a program assistant with the Russell Sage Foundation. Okay, so just to get us started, we're going to first touch on some housekeeping notes. So first, this meeting is being recorded and will be available on our website within either by the end of the week or early next week. Um, If you have any questions for us, we please ask that you use the Q&A function for questions. It just helps us to keep track of the questions that do come in. And it's just easier for us to manage as well. If you put in the chat, we may not be able to get to them in the chat, so I ask you to avoid using the chat for any questions that you have for us, and please use the Q&A function. We will be using that at the end of our webinar to answer any questions. And speaking of questions, we ask that you don't ask specific project-related questions. This webinar is meant to be more of a broader introduction into our programs, or in this case, the Dissertation Research Grant. And we just don't have the time or the capacity to specifically answer any narrow question that you may have. If you do have any questions that are project related or project specific, we ask that you email us at the email listed there, programs@rsage.org. And you may provide us a brief paragraph or two regarding what your project entails and any specific questions that you do have related to that project. Moving forward, let's get this party started. So, first things first, who are we? We are the Russell Sage Foundation. We were founded in 1907 by Margaret Olivia Sage after her husband, Russell Sage, passed away. And she founded this foundation for the specific purpose to improve the social and living conditions in the United States. Now, the Russell Sage Foundation has two main periods, I would say. The first period was between its founding to 1907, so that would be, to 1944, so that would be 1907 to 1944. And during this period, the Russell Sage Foundation was more focused on institutional support and providing private local agencies or social agencies with poverty reduction projects and city planning, labor reform, housing, public health, social work, education, customer credit, and industrial relations. Something of note, and if anybody is from the New York area, the neighborhood of Forest Hills was partially funded through the Russell Sage Foundation. There is a playground named after Russell Sage because of the contributions from the Russell Sage Foundation to the development of that area, I believe in the 1930s. So very cool random history that we have towards New York City. However, since 1945 to the present, we shifted our focus and we are more interested in looking into the social science research, strengthening methodology, data collection, and theoretical core of our social science. And so we basically shifted away from direct service work to more research-based, and that is the unique niche that the Russell Sage Foundation covers in terms of philanthropy and research. Also of note, the Russell Sage Foundation is one of the oldest philanthropies in the United States. So very cool.
All right, I'm going to chat a little bit about our different program areas. These are the main focuses that the foundation has that is set by our board of trustees. So for the Dissertation Research Grants Program, we accept projects in all of these program areas. So we have a program area on behavioral science and decision-making in context. This program area used to be called behavioral economics, and then we decided that we wanted to signal that we weren't just interested in behavioral science from economists. We actually want to see it from across the different social science disciplines. We have a longstanding program on the future of work. Here we look at things that have to do with the labor market, have to do with the quality of jobs, have to do with things like anything from automation to debates around what the minimum wage should be, how jobs should look in the future, how jobs look right now. And we then have a program on race, ethnicity, and immigration. And just as a specific call out, we do have a focus on immigrant integration that is co-funded with the Carnegie Corporation. And then we have a program on inequality. It used to just be referred to as social inequality, but we wanted again to broaden the scope. So we are looking at social inequality, political inequality, and economic inequality. Of note here at the bottom, we generally do not fund studies that are focused on health outcomes. That does not mean if you're looking at health outcomes that we cannot fund your study. It just means we don't want it to be the main outcome of interest. Again, generally this is, we are looking to fill a niche, and there are much larger funders out there that do focus on health outcomes, places like NIH, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And for similar reasons, we generally don't focus on projects that are looking at focusing on educational processes, teacher outcomes, curriculum development. We are interested in things on student attainment in education, particularly as students are getting closer to entering the labor market, and other things about educational inequality. But again, if you're focusing on the processes or curriculum development, we would much rather have that go to a place like, say, the Spencer Foundation, because they do focus on those things. That said, on this question at the bottom, if you have questions about whether your project fits within what RSF is looking for, or if we would rather have you go to a different funder, please email us at the email address Deandra mentioned earlier, programs@rsage.org, and we can have a chat about that, because this line is sometimes pretty fuzzy. I will say that each of our core program areas has a section on our website where we talk about the funding priorities of each of those program areas. We call that an RFP, or a request for proposals. There we have examples of research questions that we are interested in each of those program areas. So it's a good idea for you, if you have an idea of the type of research question you're asking, you can go see which of those programs it fits best in. I will, with the caveat that we completely understand that there's a ton of overlap between these program areas. Obviously, if you're studying race in this country, there is a lot that overlaps a lot with inequality, and et cetera, et cetera. So if you are unsure about which program area to apply to, and you looked at the RFP and you looked at the questions available, and you're still sort of thinking, oh, mine could fit into one or the other, don't stress about it too much. Unlike really large funders like NSF or something like that, if you apply to the wrong program area, or if you indicate on your application that this project is in a certain program area and we disagree, we'll just move it over, and it doesn't punish you as an applicant at all. We'll just sort of, and sometimes we'll even review a project as sort of at the intersection of two different programs. So we're not really limited by the program areas, but they do give you as an applicant a good idea of the types of questions that we are interested in as a foundation. All right, Deandra, you can go to the next slide.
Okay, so today we are here to discuss in particular the Dissertation Research Grants, which has a deadline of February 1st of this year. The Dissertation Research Grants is one of our newer initiatives, is designed to help diversify the grant pools, or the grantees that we provide funding for. And in this case, the Dissertation Research Grant, or DRG, provides up to 1-year grants for up to $10,000 to eligible doctoral students for dissertation research related to the RSF's core program areas. Those core program areas relating to the previous slide. Now, students that are eligible for this need to be ABD by the time that the funds are dispersed, which should be by June 1st. So June 1st is the earliest that you can receive funding, or I'm sorry, that's not correct. I'm thinking of another time. Stephen, could you remind me when does the funding get dispersed?
We'll sort of cover this on the next slide anyway, but yeah, you can expect funding this summer if you apply at the February 1st deadline. If we really hustle and your university responds to all of our queries and all of the materials are put in time, we could maybe get a June start date, but most of these will be dispersed in probably July.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. So some areas that you can get potential funding for is an up to $5,000 stipend. So this could cover your rent potentially, which we all know is something that everybody needs these days. Research assistance, study participant incentives. So if, for example, if you are doing surveys and you need to pay your survey participants $20 gift cards, this could be used towards that. Data acquisition, transcription or lab costs, and travel for data collection. Formal budgets are not needed at the time of the application. The only thing that you need at the time of application is your LOI or your proposal and your CV, which Stephen will give more details about in the following slides.
So I will chat quickly about eligibility. As Deandra mentioned, this is really designed for folks who are ABD. And we realize that across various disciplines that can look differently. So again, any questions about your specific case about eligibility, like would we consider you eligible this year? Please go ahead and email us at thatprogram@rsage.org. We understand different universities and institutions have slightly different methods about when you are considered ABD or when your dissertation proposal is approved or anything like that. So we're happy to discuss those. We just don't want to take up all of the time in the Q&A talking about individual cases. So please email us and we're happy to chat about that. Essentially, we want you to be at the end stages of your doctorate. You've completed all of your classes and you have an idea of the project that you're going to be doing for your dissertation, and you are essentially ready to do something like the data collection, or you're ready to purchase a data set and get started on the analysis. You're ready to go out and interview folks, whatever that sort of is, and you want to be doing that this summer or this coming fall. That means you're likely at the right stage for us. We do, after as Deandra mentioned, at the time of application, we are really just looking for a proposal narrative and your CV. We will require some extra stuff after approval, only for those who are approved. We will come up with a budget together, and we want to see that your dissertation advisor has sort of approved this project and has seen the reviews that we send and things like that. I will note this last bullet. If you are fully funded and have a lot of resources at your institution, we're less likely to move your proposal forward. Essentially, we are looking for applicants who do not have the time or resources to do the project and need this to get over the hump. That said, if your form of funding is in the form of a research assistant or a teaching assistant, we'll probably still look at it, because we're not considering those we're not considering those fully funded. We're considering those like you're having to work for a living, and not that other students aren't. But and again, any questions about whether your personal situation would fit in terms of what we're looking for eligibility, just please email us and we will be able to have a personal conversation about your situation and come up with. You can go to the next slide, Deandra. As we've mentioned a couple times, at the deadline time of February 1st, we just need to see the proposal narrative and your CV. You also have to fill out a short questionnaire on our Influx, our grants management platform. That usually has some easy to answer questions, like we'll want to see an abstract of your project. We'll have some questions about what type of methods you plan on using in your research. Will it be qualitative or quantitative? Do you need things? What does your analytic plan look like? Is if you're using mixed methods, which one of them is the primary method of analysis? And then finally, as I mentioned, if we are going to approve the project, there's a whole lot of other things that we will need, but those come sort of after the approval. We don't need those from everyone. And these are things that will be needed before the funds are dispersed. So if you need IRB approval, we will need that before the foundation releases funds. We will need to see confirmation that you have access to the data, if that's applicable, that you pre-registered your RCT, if that's applicable, and everything like that. You can go to the next slide, Dan.
Okay, and just a brief overview of our timeline for the dissertation research grant. First thing you need to do is pre-register with Flux. So that means that you need to register for an account in Flux. And it will take about approximately 3 to 5 business days for our team to process your registration. Typically a lot sooner if you do it ahead of time. If you register closer to the deadline, a lot of people are doing that all at once, and it may take us a little longer to process your registration. So the sooner you register in our system, the easier, or you'll have access or immediate access to the registration or to the application portal. The next step would be to submit your application materials by the February 1st deadline. Please make sure to adhere to these deadlines, as we don't want to delay any reviewing in our own reviewing process. So again, the deadline is February 1st of this year, 2024. Internal staff review happens afterwards. So this is basically the internal staff takes a look at your proposal and to see if it generally fits our program areas. And this is where we would do what we call desk rejects, where we may say like, no, this one, unfortunately, great project, but does not fit our criteria because, for example, they are doing survey study on farmers in France. Fabulous. Oh, we wish you well, but unfortunately, we cannot fund a project like that if it is not a US focused project. However, as a caveat to that one point, rarely we do comparisons. But again, the focus must be United States. Going back, if you get past the internal staff review phase, that's when we will recruit external reviewers who are experts in their field, and we do our best to match and also match and diversify who we ask as reviewers. But generally speaking, we want to have people that know and have an understanding of the project that you are planning to work on and asking for funding for. So we will have one round of peer review from external reviewers. And after we have the reviews, we will have decisions to you in May of this year. And then your funding will start on or after July 1st, 2024.
Deandra, I actually just noticed that we have these slides in the wrong order. Can you go to the next one and then we'll come back to this one?
Go to the next one. Okay, great.
Great, thanks. As Deandra mentioned, we have an initial screen internally. You can think of that as sort of like a desk reject stage if you were submitting to a journal. And the majority of our applications are actually screened out at this stage. And as Deandra mentioned, this is often because projects are not a fit with what the foundation is looking for. It's either focused outside the US. It's just doing something that doesn't fit within our priority areas. Things like program evaluations, we tend not to fund studies with animals. As I previously mentioned, if it's too focused on health outcomes or educational curriculum matters or something like that, that's actually the biggest reason that we reject things. It just doesn't fit with the foundation priorities. So again, we encourage you to go ahead and send us like a quick abstract or even just like the title to that programs@rsage.org, and we can probably from that let you know whether you should consider if you can clear that hump. Like if it's of interest, that's already a good thing. The next reason things are usually rejected at this internal screen is that we just don't have enough details. We really would like you to focus on the research question, the research design, and the methodology that you're proposing. We want to see a level of detail of the project so we know what we're getting out of it. Yes, you should still have a section on a lit review so that we know you're well situated within the theory, but just don't have that take over. You only have 5 pages. We don't want the lit review and the discussion of why this is an important topic to take up the first 4 pages, and then you're left with like really quick at the end, you're going to describe what you're going to do. Use most of the space that you're given to describe this research design. It's always a good reminder that the Russell Sage Foundation is an interdisciplinary funding institution. So your lit review should show that you have read broadly. If you are saying that this is the first time this has ever been studied, but then you're ignoring 10 years of literature in another discipline, that's not necessarily going to go over well with our interdisciplinary reviewers. So it's just a good idea to make sure that you know the landscape beyond your discipline. Finally, there's always other reasons, lack of clarity, vagueness. It just doesn't look like it's appropriate. One thing to understand about us here at the foundation is we are no longer experts. If we ever were, that means we read broadly across different methodologies, disciplines, and things like that. So we don't know necessarily if the details about whether something is a good fit, but we have read a lot of these proposals. We read broadly the top journals across the various social science disciplines, and we have a good idea. We're skimming these, and so if something doesn't sit right when we're reading your proposal, it may not go forward. Essentially, just to give you an idea of scale, if we are planning on making about 30 to 40 of these grants, we have received in the past couple of years anywhere from 200 to 300 applications. So if we receive 300 applications and we're going to fund about 30, that's a 10% funding rate. And we're not going to send all 300 of those out for external review. We're probably going to get rid of maybe half to 2/3 of them. You don't want to give us a reason to reject your proposal. So just try to have it organized in a way so that we don't have, if you're thinking of our internal workflow, how much time we can dedicate to each of these proposals when we're doing that internal review, we are skimming them. So we are skimming them, we're looking at the topic, we're looking at the data and methods, we're asking ourselves questions like, oh, do they have access to the data yet? Or do they have a plan to get access to the data? Do they have a plan? Do they have an interview protocol if they're planning on doing interviews? Like, we want to know that this project is well designed and is at a stage where it's not sort of still in that that preliminary phase where you're still sort of brainstorming what maybe you have a research question, but you're not sure how you're going to approach it yet. We want to see a research question that has a well-mapped methodology, a plan for how to use the data or how to get the data that answers that question being posed. Finally, if you already receive large amounts of support elsewhere, we are looking to fill a need where a project maybe would not happen otherwise. And now I'll chat a little bit about what we ask our external reviewers. If Deandra, you can go to the previous slide. Previous slide. Yeah, there we go. So as Deandra mentioned quickly earlier, we are matching our reviewers based on a couple different things. It's not just necessarily that someone's going to be from the same discipline you work in, although that is one of the things that we look to match on. We are also looking for other folks potentially in other disciplines who are looking at the same topic that you're looking at. That may mean they don't have the same familiarity methodologically or familiarity with the data that you're proposing to use, but we will make sure that there is someone who does have that sort of familiarity. We are basically trying to customize these matches. It's instead of like a broad panel of people who's going to see all of the proposals that we're sending to review, your project will probably be reviewed by a group of 3 or 4 people who will not see that exact group will not be on any other project. And we're asking these reviewers, who are often former grantees of ours, who are active researchers and active academics across the social science disciplines. This is basically what we're asking them in their review. And you can see right off the top, we want to see that the research question, if it's interesting and compelling, is basically going to be supported in the theory and current empirical work. And then we want to know that the proposed research design, data, and methods are appropriate to answer the question or questions being posed. If you're proposing a causal question, we would like to see a causal design, essentially. We would like to see something like a power analysis, etc. Then we ask them, based on your CV, do you have the training to carry out the project? Or is there do they suggest that this person is maybe bit off more than they can chew? We want to know the contribution of the project. Like, is this is this going to lead to, I don't know, a field-changing publication in a top 5 journal? Or is this going to be, is it well situated in literature and it's a marginal contribution, but it's still a really interesting contribution that should be asked? We just sort of want to see where this project fits. And then finally, we always ask them for any suggestions that they can offer to help strengthen or improve the project. All right, you can go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so some tips and suggestions for writing your proposals. First thing, make sure that your project is a fit with our foundation's funding priorities. Please just make sure to look over what we primarily do fund and to see if your project is a fit within that. Otherwise, we know how much time and effort goes into making these projects, and we do want to make sure that your time is used with value. The next thing is that your research questions should drive the proposal. When you only have about 5 pages in this proposal, that is a very limited amount of time and space for you to map out your research design, to describe your data and methods appropriately. So you really want to dedicate as much of that space to mapping out what is your research design and your data methodology. That being said, again, lengthy sections devoted to what your qualifications are or how your project fits with RSS goals are unnecessary and takes away from the real meat and potatoes of your proposal, which is your research design and your methodology. Because your CV should tell that for itself, whether or not you as an investigator are qualified. And the proposal, if written appropriately, should also speak to itself about whether or not it fits RSF's goals or not. So really just focus on that research design and methodology. That would be very helpful. Provide sufficient information for reviewers to evaluate, so that they can get a good sense of whether or not your methods are appropriate for whatever research design that you are doing. Don't overpromise or exaggerate what your project is capable of. So for example, do not use causal language if you do not have causal design, because this will be pointed out by our reviewers. Remember to show understanding of your strengths and limitations of your design and methodology. This actually is a plus for you if you could even mention this before the reviewers do so themselves. And if you are asked to respond to reviewers, remember to be gracious and to seriously and in depth respond to their questions if they have any. And like we were discussing before, our reviewers are interdisciplinary. You may not have a reviewer who is in the same discipline as you, so they may ask a question that you may find irrelevant, or you may not have thought of because of whatever the field that you're in. So remember to be gracious when you're responding to reviewers if you are asked to respond, and to also think critically and in depth about their response as well. For example LOIs, you can find this on our website. The tips and guidelines page of our website, where you could also find a recording of this webinar. So you'd have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll find a link that will connect you to example LOIs and proposals, and this will show you typically what we have funded in the past, or examples of successful LOIs and proposals, and that way you get a sense of what we're looking for in proposals and LOIs. And of course, remember to register on time and to submit your applications on time. So due to our administrative limitations, please, at the very least, register for Flux 48 hours in advance of the deadline. And again, that deadline for dissertation research grant is February 1st, 2024. And again, if you get a reject from us, remember that we are very tough. They're all excellent proposals. However, we cannot fund everything. So if you get a no from us, do not take that as a bad thing. You can, we encourage people to reapply if it fits with our funding priorities, of course. And if anything, we do provide mass reviews. If you do make it to the external review stage, we do provide extra mass reviews. So that way, even if you get a no from us, you still get that feedback so that you could further develop your project. And if you think that it is a good match, or it could fit in the future, or if you have a future project that you think would fit with our funding priorities, by all means, please apply for us again, and we'd be happy to review it. Also of note, so the Russell Sage Foundation has an open access journal, which you can access over here. Again, these are also interdisciplinary and peer reviewed. So please take a look for our latest open call by clicking the link there for our Russell Sage Foundation journal. And you could feel free to peruse also our other past journals as well. The next thing I want to highlight is our summer institutes. Eligibility for the summer institutes are PhD students, postdocs, and early career faculty. But this year, we are going to be hosting the Behavioral Economics Institute, and which will have a deadline of either February or March of this year. So please keep an eye out on our website for updates. And to get further updates from us regarding funding and deadlines, I would suggest that you enroll for our newsletter, where we send monthly newsletters that give you the latest updates from the Russell Sage Foundation directly. We also have an open access data sets, which you could access right here, and possibly help with any future research that you are doing. And as always, feel free to look at our website for any updates regarding Russell Sage's programs and deadlines. And as a heads up, Russell Sage has no restrictions based on citizenship, country of study, or country of employment. So please, all are welcome at the Russell Sage Foundation.
All right, so we will take a, please, again, there's a few questions in the Q&A, but go ahead and put any in there that you, if you don't see one that applies to you. A bunch of these should be relatively quick as I've been looking at them. So the first question I see is equipment to conduct data collection an eligible expense? Quick answer is yes. Second answer is it depends. So equipment like if you need recording equipment to do qualitative interviews, yes, things like that. If you need a new laptop to I don't know, and to do some sort of the analysis or something like that, then it can be maybe and it depends, and that it's we sort of just need to know what you're planning on doing it for. For most budget questions, though, I do want to say that at the time of application, we don't need a ton of information on it. There was another question where someone asked about the brief budget description that we ask for in the narrative, but I can't help but underline brief. We really do not need a ton of information. We sort of want to know the basic things that you're going to ask for. We don't need it to be broken down exactly. An example would be, you could say something like, I'm going to ask for $5,000 for the stipend, $2,000 in participant incentives, and $3,000 in travel or something like that. Like we don't need it broken down. Actually, you don't even need to say dollar amounts exactly like that. We just sort of want to know what are the big buckets that you plan on spending the money on. So if it's if you need to purchase a data set, that would be an example there. If you need it to travel to go do an ethnography or some interviews, that would be an example. But sort of, I just don't want that section to take up more than one or two sentences, just because I can't say enough that really we want to see most of the space dedicated to the research design, and I would hate for you to leave out details in the research design to talk more about what you're planning on spending the money on.
The
Go
next
ahead.
question, yeah, the next question I see, and we do get this question a lot, regarding overlap of program areas. Yeah, we get this question quite often. Just remember, Russell Sage is, we are an interdisciplinary research foundation. And we often know that our programs overlap. We understand this quite often. So let's say that you submit an application under the Future of Work program, but it touches a little bit on race, right? And you decide to apply it under Future of Work. But when we're reviewing it and we're like, actually, you know what, this one is better for our race, ethnicity, immigration program. All we'll do is just move it over. So it doesn't really affect you if you put it in the quote unquote wrong program. It does not affect the reviewing process of your application. The only thing we'll do is just move it to what we feel is the more appropriate program. But what I would say is that you just you kind of just take a look at your project, look at our funding priorities, and you make the determination of whether or not that project fits in Future of Work or social, political, and economic inequality. That's up to you. Ultimately, if we decide that, you know what, maybe it actually goes into REI, that's fine. We'll just move it over. It has no impact.
And it's never a bad thing to just, if your proposal or your project does fit in two different programs, that just means it's more likely to be a fit for the foundation's priorities. So it's not a bad thing to mention like a sentence or something that says, oh, this could fit under this area of interest under the inequality program, or this area of interest under the race and ethnicity program, or something like that. But again, as long as you're not spending a ton of time trying to convince us which program area it's under, we don't, or a ton of time and a ton of space. Again, I'll just reiterate, we just want to see, we want to see the meat and potatoes. We want to see the research design. The next couple questions are related. There's a question about whether there are limits for other items besides the stipend, and the answer is no. We would like you to basically, if you're asking for something like maybe a survey through YouGov, we would want to see a quote from the survey provider or something like that. But essentially, you're allowed to ask for what the thing costs up to the $10,000 total. And similar, whether child costs are an acceptable expense. Unfortunately, no, not as a research expense, but that's sort of why we have that $5,000 stipend. So you can, so in reality, up to half of it can be for childcare, but it's just, we would clarify, we would identify that as the stipend. The next question I see is about dissertations that are three papers. This is often in economics or in various things where you have three different projects that you turn into your dissertation. Oftentimes it might be that a couple of those projects may not be related to foundation priorities, but one of them is, and then we could fund that one. It sort of depends the funding amount. Also, what I would recommend is really that you focus on the one project that is the best fit for the foundation and give us the most details on that one. Because if you're going to try to describe the research design for three different projects in the same application, you're really just, it's not as good for you because you're not going to be able to go into the same level of detail. So what I would recommend is pick the one that is most appropriate to fit with the foundation's priorities. Also one that might be at the right stage where it's not, sometimes projects are almost completed or sometimes projects are a little bit too preliminary. Maybe there's one that's in that sort of sweet spot. That would be the one that I suggest. Again, if you have questions if you want to send us like a quick abstract about all three of your projects and say which one of these should be the one that I focus on for the foundation, that's fine as well. We're happy to answer those questions by email. There's a couple questions about if you have current existing funding, how are we determining eligibility? So the first one is if you have funding in the form of a stipend from a TA or RA, but you don't have research funding, yes, you should still apply. That we would generally, basically, we are looking for folks who don't have research funds. And similarly, if you have a department fellowship that covers living expenses, you don't have something that covers your research funds yet, yes, we are likely to still review your project. These are not the cases that we're talking about. We're really talking about a few very well-resourced departments or institutions where folks have projects that are pretty much already set financially. The next question I see has to do with this sort of like when is a project appropriate? So if you complete data collection by the July date, would we still fund the analysis and writing portion? That's sort of an it depends. This isn't designed to be a write-up grant for writing up, but we do recognize that analysis of existing data needs to take place. So for those types of projects, we might like to see if you have any preliminary findings or early preliminary data that you have, but explain why there's still more to do. Would be really helpful in your application. Like, here's what I'm going to do with the time that this gives me. We have a question on spring defense of the dissertation is acceptable. Does the date need to be settled? No, that does not need to be settled. We would just need to see the defense prior to the funds being dispersed. It may lead to a delay in the disbursement of those funds. Like if your defense isn't until late June or something like that, it might mean we're not able to get the money out the door earlier than that. But we don't need a date at the time. Sorry, scrolling down here in the Q&A. Where should you highlight the stage you are in regards to the data? Yeah, you can have a standalone data section to talk about this, or I've often seen some data methods combined sections. I highly recommend you look at some of the successful applications that we have. We have example applications for our larger research projects that are done by faculty. We have a couple examples of previously successful dissertation grants. All of these have different page limits. So some of them are 4 pages, some of them are 5 pages, but they can give you an idea of the sections and even of the ratio, how much space previous successful applicants have dedicated to various sections like the lit review, like the data, like a data section or a method section, but we have a lot of flexibility about that.
I see a question here regarding, sorry, I just lost it for a second. Regarding whether they need committee approval. From my understanding, not at the time of submission, but if you are asked to respond, then yes, you would. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yeah, and if you have committee approval already, you can, yeah, let us know at the time of that you apply to. That's also fine. But we don't need it. We don't need it until prior to the funds being dispersed. There's a few questions in here about the right stage, and I've talked a little about that, like whether a project is too far along, or if you've already started collecting data. Again, these are sort of it depends answers. Yes, it is possible to have a project that's too far along. If it looks like it's pretty much already done and you only have to write it up, we're less likely to be supportive of it. We really want this. We want this to go towards the research itself. If you've already started some data collection, like if you already started some interviews, but you have more to do and you could still use more funding to do that, I think you should probably apply, because I think that definitely, you can maybe describe the data collection you've already done, because it sort of shows like the path that you're on. But if you have questions, if like for these sort of individual questions about where your project is, whether this is a good fit or not, go ahead and email us and we can talk in detail. You can explain in detail and you don't have to share like through this Q&A function. Can I speak to the balance between existing data and future questions in our proposal? Sure. This is again another it depends. Some projects like don't have any preliminary data and need the funding to get anything started. Some people have some preliminary data and results, but they are now like, okay, now we did this pre-test on something like Mechanical Turk, and now we would like to scale it up and do like a representative sample or something, a bigger survey or something like that. Like, yeah, all of those are fine. We just want to know where the project goes, what is the value add to continuing to collect more data or something like that.
Also, I see here a question about external reviews, and it says, is there another round of reviews after that? So for the dissertation research grants, there's only one round of external review. And if you are asked to respond, you will be notified by email, which we also highlight when you are setting up your Flux account, make sure that whatever your information is, your contact information is accurate. And if I've had this in the past where I've had an applicant change institutions and an email was sent to their old email because they did not update us. So if this ever does happen to you and you're applying to us and you change institutions, just send us a quick email to programs@rsh.org, and just tell us, hey, I've changed institutions. Here's my new email and contact information, and we'll update it for you. Otherwise, you won't get the information. Furthermore, I would suggest that you check spam, because some institutions, for whatever reason, put our emails into spam. So again, just make sure to check your inbox and your spam folder in case that our message was somewhat pushed that way. I also saw an earlier message or a question about the proposals itself and the length of the proposals, what it could be included in the 5-page proposal. And it was speaking to the appendix. I just want to make it clear that anything in an appendix is not counted towards the 5-page proposal. That also includes any references or any charts or tables that you have. So usually I recommend applicants to, if they have any charts or figures, just put it into an appendix. It's not counted towards your 5-page limit.
I'll jump in quickly and say, as long as you don't
Yeah.
abuse that,
Right.
I would limit charts, like a charts and tables appendix to 1. But if you're talking about an interview protocol or a survey instrument or anything like that, yes, and those would be unlimited, because those can obviously be many pages. So if you have an interview protocol ready, if you have a survey instrument ready, you can include those as appendix, and they will not count towards the page limit. There's a couple questions about how the funding model works, whether it's a reimbursement or if it's lump sum. And so the way this usually works, unfortunately, depends on your institution. Most institutions, I believe, we don't send the money to you. We send the money to your university. And then a lot of universities use the reimbursement model where they have to track your spending. That is one reason why we do like having the stipend available to you, because universities will often give you that stipend right at the beginning, and then you may have to use the reimbursement model for other things. So that's sort of something you may have to eventually work out with your Office of Research or Office of Sponsored Projects at your institution. It might be in your department, it might be in your college, it might be at your university. These vary differently based on institution. It might be something you want to talk to your advisor about if your advisor has had previous external grants before. There's a question about your current funding status and where you let us know about that. I believe it's a question in the application form where we just quickly ask about your current level of support and something like that. And the question about back funding, very similar to my previous answer, very dependent on the institution. Some institutions will allow you to reimburse for spending that started earlier. We are usually okay with whatever the university is okay with. We don't really police that. Oftentimes they may require that the start date of the grant be the date that we use. It is possible, and we are okay with calling something an earlier start date, so essentially backdating the start date to allow for that, but it sort of depends on what your university is okay with. So these differ greatly from institution to institution, so it might be something you have to talk to with your Office of Sponsored Projects or someone in your whoever at your institution deals with grants and contracts from external funders. And that's actually a good habit to get into anyway. Those are often gatekeepers at institutions, and they can be really helpful, or they can be impediments to funding. So it's a good idea to be in have good relationships with the folks who work in those offices. That's all of the questions that were in the queue. Again, please email us with any individual, like, hey, does this project sound like a fit? Is this project at the right stage? Do you think I sound like I'm eligible, or am I too early, or something like that? Like all of those questions, we are happy to email them. We expect to get a bunch right after this webinar, so it may take us a couple days to get to them, but we probably will get to them over the next by the end of this week, by early next week, well ahead of the deadline for you to apply. So that it might be that we're able to, if it's a bad fit, maybe you don't waste all of your wasted day putting together an application, or if it's a good fit, we can at least let you know that it's worth spending some time on the application. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Again, this recording should be up if you need to refer to it, and it'll be up in the next couple of days. But please feel free to email that email address that's on the screen right now, programs@rsh.org. All three of us, Deandra, Maya, and myself, answer it, and it increases the likelihood that you'll get a response.